Morning. Thank you all very much for joining us today for our virtual lower school information session. We are so glad that you're here. My name is Jennifer Webb. I am the Director of Enrollment Management and Financial Aid here at Flint Hill. And we have an event today planned for you that we hope will be very informative and enjoyable. So a little bit about our event today. We're going to hear from our headmaster, John Thomas, about Flint Hill. We're also going to hear from Robin Nichols and Megan Dar about our approach to learning in the lower school. Our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Mia Burton, is also here with us today. We'll hear a current parent perspective from a current lower school parent, Kathleen Strotman, and then we'll have a panel with several of the people that I just mentioned, and we'll also talk about the admission process and hear from our Director of the Learning Center on that panel as well. So we're really looking forward to getting started. And just a couple features before I turn it over to John to tell you more about Flint Hill is that most of us are used to these virtual formats by now, but we're also used to the fact that for best sound quality, we do stay muted. So we will keep it on mute, but we do ask that you engage. We really want to hear from you. We're glad you're here. We want to hear your comments. We want to hear your questions. We want to be sure that we answer all of your questions. So please do not be shy about using the chat function. There is a box at the lower right-hand corner of your screen with a couple lines in it, and that is the chat. So send your questions in there, send your comments in there. Two of our lower school team members, Dawn Hopke, who is the Associate Director of the lower school and works closely with grades JK to 4, and Rika Reed, who works closely with grades 5 and 6, are also here today, and they're going to help us throughout the event, including making sure that your questions and comments get seen. Good morning. I see some people using the chat already. Great. Love it. So at this point, I will go ahead and turn it over to our headmaster, John Thomas.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer, and welcome to everybody. Hearing a title like headmaster, you may be wondering what the heck does that mean? Just to put it in some perspective, if we were doing this live, which we had hoped to do, and then with an abundance of caution, we made the shift to the virtual, I would have been at the front door greeting you and welcoming you. And then a lot of times at events, I'm there, wishing people well and saying goodbye. And I had done it at an event, and an aunt of a couple of our students had been with the girls. And as they were leaving, they were overheard the aunt asking the girls, "So who was that nice man at the door who just said goodbye to us?" She goes, "Oh, that's Mr. Thomas. He's our school's mascot." So what we realize is all of us take on very specific roles and things. And I'm not the mascot, though I would love to be. But the idea is our mascot is a husky. And we use the Iditarod dog sled race as a metaphor for our educational journey and life's journey, with the idea that some days that race must be beautiful and breathtaking, and other days it's downright scary and frightening. But the beauty of it all is you're part of a team, and that nobody on that dog sled is any more important than anybody else, and you're doing it together. And that is one of the through lines we talk about at school all the time, that our mascot is not just for athletics, it is for our life journey and our time here at school, which I think is exciting. To give you an idea, though, of one of our major through lines, I want to show you a brief slideshow and walk you through it very quickly. But make sure you really focus on that. I'm going to turn my camera off and then try and present this to you. And then Jennifer, if you'll help make sure that I do get this to come up.
Absolutely. So it shows that your screen's presenting, see the presentation, and now it's full screen.
Great. Perfect. And this is the idea, as I said, since we're Huskies and everything, it's the idea of blazing your trail, finding what is going to be important, because as parents, I know you give your kids unconditional love, but you're here because the other major thing we do as parents is get our kids educated, and doing that. And as you get to know us today, I want that to be part of this great adventure, that it is something that clearly is something that the entire family gets involved in. And as we walk through, and as I walk you through some of this one key piece of our through line, realize that everything we do here is trying to be very intentional, deliberate, strategic, and above all in today's world, safe. And all of it is focused around trying to come up with the benefits. Why in the world would you consider any school for your children? But all of it ultimately comes down to what's really going to inspire them for the future, get them excited. As you get to know us, as you hear Robin in a few minutes and Megan, you're going to get a sense that we're really very entrepreneurial. We're a school that takes great delight in looking at what is really relevant, what is really dynamic, but how do we make sure that it is personal? How do we make sure that everything we do is meaningful and that we really do take seriously this idea about being curious and about innovating and everything? One year we had a Native American family come in. They set up a Native American village on the lower school campus. And we had our second graders going through that learning process and, going to different stations. And I happened to be on the campus that day, and I jumped in with the second grade, and I'd been on a log with this one young man. We had rocks and we were carving out a canoe. I mean, our job was to try and be carving this thing out, and it would eventually become a canoe. And when it was time to change and everything, we were walking over to, I think we were going to crush corn now. And he is just jumping up and down with enthusiasm. He was so excited about what we were doing. Grabbed my hand. He's doing it. He goes, "Mr. Thomas, this is so cool. This is so much better than school." What I loved about that was that this was school. This is one of the ways we teach, is to get the kids engaged. It's active, it's participatory. And he'll never forget that time spent as a member of that Native American village. Now, as I said, we have through lines. One is being a Husky, being part of a team, realizing we're doing this together. Another one has to do with relationships and seeing your teachers truly as effective mentors and people who are really there to help you and do that. Our technology, you'll hear some about that later, and just the fact that we begin teaching it early on and everything, and it's all about acceptable use. But clearly, I think at the core of everything we do are our core values. We used to have 4 very deliberate core values: honesty, respect, responsibility, and compassion. And then in an exercise we did a few years ago, we recognized everything we do here is all about momentum and doing things actively and everything. And while those are wonderful core values and they're the foundation of them, we realized we need to make them more action oriented. And so we shifted them slightly to these 5. And I want to just quickly walk you through those, because we start talking about these with our junior kindergarten students, and it carries on all the way to our seniors. I mean, I had a meeting yesterday with the senior class, and we even talked about these values and what they do. The idea of respecting and valuing all equally, well, that goes to the heart of who we are and who we are as people and how we treat other people and all that. It is absolutely significant, particularly in a world today where there are so many different things going on. We need to embrace the great diversity that comes into our school. If you've seen on our website pictures of like our upper school and in our lower school, the flags on the walls, there's just an enormous coming together of people from all over the world. We have over 115 nationalities in our school family. And to be quite honest with you, I think that's a quiet gift that we're giving our kids, that every time they go to have a play date or be with other kids, they may be hearing other languages in a house. They may have different foods or realize that their friends celebrate different holidays and all that. It is a great way for us to help them realize that there is a wonderful sense of diversity coming in by being co-ed, by different learning styles, different races, religions. You go down the list. It really does, I think, signify how important it is to be one school family and one group. The idea of leading and supporting with compassion. It all comes down to reaching out and being friends with everybody, welcoming new students, trying to make sure that we are excited, that we're demonstrating empathy, and that if all things, passion is so much more important than pressure. And we make sure that we do that, because while our kids, even as we get to the high school, they are working hard and will go to amazing colleges and universities, it really isn't pressure. And we are not a pressure cooker kind of school. And there are lots of great schools that are. We're all about the benefit of learning how to learn, knowing there are people there to support you, but do it in a way that you can balance everything else that's going on around you, whether it's arts, athletics, leadership opportunities, all of that becomes important. The idea of acting with integrity, always at the heart of, I think, raising kids. With our three, my wife and I raised three boys, and the idea of honesty and integrity was really at the core of everything we did with them. And it's something that we've talked about here at school, particularly as we've gone through this COVID experience together with our families. I'm a firm believer that the three most important things you can do right now in schools is communicate, communicate, communicate. And so that comes down to that idea of integrity, making sure people know what you're thinking, what you feel you need to do right now. How do we protect each other? How do we make sure that we're working together as one, even though we're three divisions, two campuses, we're one school. And I think last year, particularly with the virtual and the on campus and how we did that blend, it developed an enormous amount of trust with our families. And that all came back to us being absolutely honest with them about what we were doing. Imagining what's possible, this is what we came from, the idea of responsibility. We have a responsibility to always be looking to the future. That's what led to us having this long-standing relationship with Apple Corporation and all the technology we've been able to teach the kids. It's allowed us to benchmark with an enormous group of great schools, 15 other independent schools across the country, from Punahou in Hawaii and Pinecrest in Florida, Woodward and Atlanta, Cranbrook in Detroit, Michigan. All of it is making sure we're looking for our children. What is it possibly the best we could be doing? And hearing from other schools and us sharing what we're doing with them has been a real exciting process. Looking ahead also allowed us to come up with the idea to build an incredible new middle school building, which is now on our upper school campus for our grades 7 and 8. And it is just incredible. But all of it is trying to look down that road, because ultimately what we're going to try and do is inspire kids to find their niche, to get them excited about learning. I will tell you, I was really pleased 2 years ago at commencement. We have student speakers, our salutatorian speaks and our valedictorian. We had 2 salutatorians that year. They had a tie, and then we had 1 valedictorian. All 3 of them started at Flint Hill in the lower school. They were true products of what this school has to offer. And they're going off to great universities, or in their universities now, because they're blazing the trail. They are finding the things that are exciting for them. And all of that starts at this lower school, working in the innovation lab, beginning to learn language, with Spanish, finding ways to get excited about the learning, but knowing that those teachers are right there to help them. Now, our hope is you'll join us, and part of that blazing the trail will be that you'll want to be with us through the middle school and then ultimately into the upper school, because it really comes to fruition there, I think, with a very strong academic program, an incredible arts program where we have graduates who will go on to art schools and art institutions, a great college counseling team that is all from the college ranks and is helping our kids do that, very competitive athletics, and above all, a true sense of purpose in everything we do. To give you just one example, we have a very strong robotics program, and from that robotics program, they engage in cybersecurity, computer science competitions. They've been involved in what's called Engineering First program, which is a strong robotic system. But the one I love is in the spring, which is an unmanned aerial competition where they create a hovercraft, a drone, and it has to be able to go up 750 feet. It has to fly over 5 miles, avoid obstacles. We've been in it for now over 8 years, and 3 years ago, the last 2 years, they haven't been able to do it. But the last time we were in it, they also had to have a rover craft created underneath it and be able to drop that to the ground and go. And I will tell you, there were 75 schools in this international competition. 71 were colleges and universities, the engineering departments. Only 4 high schools in the world were invited. We were one of them. As I said, that was for our 8th time to be invited. And at the end of the competition, a Canadian university won it. Flint Hill came in second for the 2nd year in a row. And behind us on the list of American schools was Stanford University, UCLA, Harvard, Cornell, the U.S. Naval Academy. The year before that, when they had come in second the first time, I will tell you, what was really exciting is Virginia Tech came in third in the world. We loved the fact that 2 Virginia schools were in the top 3. What I really loved was the 3 leading engineering students on the Virginia Tech team were Flint Hill graduates. So realize all of us are about doing that. And a number of those kids on that team started in our lower school, had been with us from the creation of our robotics program, and had taken it on and do that. Last thing I'll just mention, and what I'm going to do is close out my screen and come back and join you, is that ultimately we have a vision for our students, and it starts in our lower and goes all the way through. And the idea is to take meaningful risks, be yourself, and make a difference. And those take meaningful risks is the idea of trying new things, get engaged in your learning, try new languages, different activities, focus in on your writing, your math, whatever it may be. Ultimately, the being themselves is something we do as a partnership, home and school working together to help them find their passions in their lives, not what we want them to have or think they're going to have. Help them find their passions, even at this young age, but ultimately to make a difference. And I see it all the time in the way the young kids in our lower school will come over and wave to me, come up and say hello. They want to share with me what they're learning. That's a meaningful risk to do that. But the excitement, the joy in their learning is something that warms my heart, and I hope would warm yours. And it's part of that trail we're all on, because ultimately they're making a difference. Now, to really learn about our lower school, I'm going to turn it over to Robin Nichols, our interim director of the lower school, and she and Megan are going to kind of talk you through a number of exciting things very directly about our program. But I wanted you to have some sense of that this is a part of something much bigger than even just one division, that it is part of something greater than ourselves, but very much a part of our school family, which we would love to welcome you into. So, Robin, I will flip it over to you.
Thank you so much, John. Again, families, welcome. Good morning. We are so excited to have you on board with us virtually today. Again, my name is Robin Nichols. I'm the interim director of the lower school. Just a little bit about myself. This is my 24th year in education and my 20th year serving in the independent school sector, and my 4th year at Flint Hill. So I'm so incredibly happy to be partnering with the lower school, current families, new families, our faculty and staff. It's an amazing division, and I hope by the end of our presentation that will resonate with you. Megan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Robin. My name is Megan Dar. I'm serving as the interim assistant director here in the lower school this year. I'm very fortunate. This is my 9th year at our amazing school in the lower school. Previously, I worked in the admission office, so I feel very akin to all of you today. And I've also served in our amazing innovation lab here in the lower school and worked with enrichment programming. This is my 18th year working in independent school education, and I'm so proud to be here today. As Robin said, we're really excited. This is one of our favorite things about our job because we just have so much to share with all of you.
All right, wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and present my screen. And Megan, if you could let me know when you see the presentation.
Looks great, Robin.
All right, wonderful. All righty, so let's go ahead and get started. Again, we are the lower school, and at Flint Hill School, that comprises of junior kindergarten through 6th grade. So hopefully by the end of this presentation, you will begin to realize and hopefully see that how intentional we are, not just in the lower school, but also at Flint Hill. Everything we do is for a reason. We're not type of, the school that really focuses on teacher center, meaning that what's going to do best for the teachers. We are really focused and determined to keep the students in the center of every decision that we make and what is best for the students. The second thing is you'll be able to understand how the lower school really aligns with the mission and the vision of our amazing institution. whole child tends to be a big phrase in education, but you will see this on our website. But when you begin to see this presentation, you will realize how we truly bring this to life about focusing on the whole child. It's not just about academics for us. We are really determined to help parents understand that if the social and emotional component, if that foundation is not solidified, then the student won't be able to flourish academically. The last thing that we're definitely going to focus on is that we are a process school, and we do process helping the students to understand and love the learning process versus an outcome. So less about grades and more about understanding the purpose of learning. We talk about a great deal about the portrait of the Flint Hill student. We want our students by the end of their graduating year to really hone into these very specific key components. We want them to be self-directed learners. We want to put them in position and in direction to be very clear problem solvers. So not just feeding them what they should do, we want to engage them in very healthy conversations to understand, what could you do? What are some options for you? We really position our students to be leaders. We help them to understand how important it is to articulate their words and to be able to speak in front of their classmates effectively. We want them to be effective communicators. We definitely expect this if our older students are even writing an email, or even if they approach leadership, or if they approach their teachers in the hallway. Last and not least, of course, we definitely want them to be ethical citizens. John talked about the benefits, and we always love to focus on the benefits. What are kind of those key points that will hopefully help to encourage you and realize what an amazing place Flint Hill is. When we started our realignment about maybe 2.5, 3 years ago, at the time, the lower school was just comprised of junior kindergarten through 4th grade, and grades 5 through 8 was the middle school. Well, we began to realize, and we did some extensive research on this, not just online, but we also went to other schools in the area and also research schools nationwide to realize that maybe the 5th and 6th graders need that little extra time to really grow and flourish and help kind of recognize who they are as students, but also as human beings. We really specialize in the first 8 years of childhood. We also understand how important it is for 5th and 6th graders to kind of have that maturity and that independence and that time to allow them to do that. We also realize how important for the 5th and 6th graders to be kind of separated for the 7th and 8th graders to kind of have and to prevent those influences. Lastly, we really want to continue to create opportunities for mentorship, for leadership. We really position our 6th grade students to be leaders, to be representatives, and what it means to be a Husky at Flint Hill. Megan?
Thanks, Robin. So one of the things we wanted to focus on today is something that we feel is a solid way we build foundation in the lower school and create a positive learning environment. We start every year building community, and we use the responsive classroom approach in grades JK through 4 and developmental designs in 5 through 6. This has very explicit ways that we build community. And the first way is we begin with you. The teacher invites you to attend what we call a Hope and Dream conference, where you'll meet with your child's teacher prior to the year even beginning. We do this for all families intentionally, with the purpose of you sharing goals you have about your child, but also just telling us more about your child, so that initial partnership is solidified. We also focus the first 6 weeks around our values. As John mentioned, that's an essential imperative part of building a solid community. And Flint Hill focuses around this idea in the lower school of the Husky Promise, which you'll see in the picture. The students recite this every morning. The students are also asked in each grade level to create developmentally appropriate rules and expectations for their classroom. And this is a way to create buy-in and self-responsibility. As Robin mentioned, we're looking for self-regulation and self-direction, but we're all working together. The other key component to every classroom is we host a morning meeting each morning, and each grade level completes this in different ways. This is an example of a kindergarten morning meeting. Students will sit in a circle all the way through 6th grade. Oftentimes in JK through 4, there'll be a morning message every day. There'll be an activity. Students will share and have specific days that they get to share about themselves. Students will learn basic skills like how to make eye contact, how to show that you're actively listening, and how to think about thoughtful questions that you have. This is a really great way to begin our day. Robin?
Continuing with the responsive classroom approach, In 5th and 6th grade is more of a continuation of the middle school version or the upper elementary school version, which is known as developmental design. As you see here, this is kind of definitely a tag on to what the junior kindergarten through 4th grade students experience. So they have their morning, they have their slide. If you see here in the 5th and 6th grade is known as the CPR, which stands for the Circle of Power and Respect. So as Megan mentioned, we are really emphasizing and focusing on students building community, building relationships in the morning, making eye contact, being able to clearly articulate what they're saying, and be able to strengthen their skills in communicating with others. We have a greeting. There's an activity for them to share. And then we also kind of have a way for them to understand what is going to be focused on for the day. Continuing here in 6th grade, with our upper grades, the 6th grade Huskies are kind of are not kind of, but they are the leaders of the lower school. They have their own floor, the 4th floor, that is designated for them. And this is also is continuing to take place during the first 6 weeks of school, which is incredibly important. We don't go immediately into academics. Again, we're all about setting the foundation and the understanding, helping students to realize what the expectations are. We are not the type of school that says you need to do this rule because I said so. It's more of, what do you think the rules should be? If you take a look at some of these anchor charts that one of our 6th grade teachers created for the students during the first 6 weeks of school, what are examples of great students? What do they say? What do they do? What don't they do? What are some best ways for you to do your work? If you notice here in the center square, it's very clear that the students understand the best way for them to learn or to focus. So for many students, they would prefer to work independently. For some, they want to work with a partner. For a few, they want to work with a group or a team. And it's not necessarily to say those students who are in the independent column are not working with members of the team, but helping them to understand who they are as learners. Last but not least, the classroom is a wonderful environment that we want to make sure is welcoming and warm for students so they can take those meaningful risks. So what does a great classroom look like? What does it feel like and what does it sound like? We're very intentional about kind of creating those conversations at the start of the year. Megan?
And that also is true of how we speak with one another. I think the beauty of what Robin alluded to earlier is that we don't take student wellness or social emotional health for granted. This is something that the teachers explicitly focus on daily. This is an example of a 2nd grade lesson. The teacher simply asked the question, how can we be kind? Kindness is something that we begin focusing on as early as junior kindergarten through literature and exploration and through dramatic play. But this becomes more explicit as the students develop language skills. And we have something called a language of learning that the teachers use. And here are some examples. These are all student generated. And this is something the teacher will keep up in their classroom. As Robin showed the anchor charts earlier, those remain up throughout the year as reminders for students. We also want to continue throughout the year to focus on those paramount relationships. Your child is known and valued by every single member of our lower school community, not just by name, but things like their favorite food, their family life, things they enjoy doing. And we also focus on building mentorship and support. So in the top left corner, you'll see that's an example. Last year, we were able to have 4th grade and JK continue to be buddies through the COVID experience in person. So with some distance, they were able to still form connections. And that's a tradition in the lower school where older students partner with our younger ones. The other thing that we like to focus on is building relationships across the grade level. So while the classroom community, it provides an intimate family life sense for students, we still encourage activities. This is a picture of the entire 6th grade that a student was able to take last year. This is our playground 2, as we call it, that's used for grades 4, 5, and 6 primarily.
Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, Flint Hill, we are all about creating opportunities to help students understand and love the process of learning. It is not just about output, but understanding the steps and what it takes in order to understand better what it means to be a learner, a lifelong learner. We focus entirely on the IBL approach, which is the inquiry-based learning. So when we have science questions, we really want to make sure that we are really taking a deep dive and helping students to understand not just what's on the surface, But what's below the surface? I always say to families that lower school teachers, we're facilitators. We're not the sages on the stage. So we're not standing in front of students talking to them. We are engaging in thoughtful conversations. If you see here in some of these questions, is not just asking very surface questions, but, for example, why are petals different colors? What is the yellow part of the center of the flower? Why does it have so many, prickles? Why do you think that? What are examples of that? What are there some flowers that you've noticed, or seeds that you've noticed that kind of have these qualities, and where have you seen them? So really helping the students to engage in very thoughtful conversations. Megan?
Students also engage in opportunities to set personal learning goals. This begins during that community building phase I mentioned earlier, but extends throughout the year. Teachers take a one-to-one approach with students since our class size allows for that. And they meet with their teacher. They have reading conferences, writing conferences, and as Robin mentioned, inquiry-based conferences where they set goals for themselves and then they self-monitor their progress. The chart on the right side is a way that we do that with younger children as they learn to write. And then they'll go back in conference with their teacher and talk through that process with their teacher. We also focus heavily on different types of learning styles. The students not only identify how they learn best, but they're able to access that through different choices. On the left slide, you'll see that's a math activity where the student is relying on several different types of manipulatives. And these are accessible to the students. And we use guided discovery as part of the responsive classroom to model appropriate use of all these materials. You'll notice the iPad there too. And that's set aside. The student isn't always using their iPad, but it's there as a resource and a tool for not just content, but for project-based learning. As Robin mentioned, the teacher is the facilitator. So I thought this slide was important to share because it really documents that. On the bottom, there is a thinking routine. Our teachers are fortunate, as Robin mentioned, to have specific training through Harvard's Project Zero around thinking routines, and that focuses on inquiry. So the teacher really wanted to hone in on the parts of a plant, so they used a parts, purposes, complexities thinking routine. And through class discussion, the teacher documented the students' examples of how the different plant parts are used. Then you'll see on the right, the second grader in this slide documented the process of doing an experiment with a controlled variable. One of her plants did not receive sunlight. The other plant did. And you see through her careful examination of thinking like a scientist, she then made observational drawings to showcase her learning and her thinking. We also encourage self-directed learning, as Robin mentioned earlier, but that is all skill-based. So the teacher has specific skills, and Robin will show you a rubric in a moment, but the focus is on the student and driving their passions. So when a student engages in a research project, the teacher has specific goals that are developmentally appropriate, but the student may create or get excited about a topic that they want to pursue further. The Innovation Lab is a special place in the lower school. We're lucky to have 3 innovation spaces this year. And one of the fundamentals of the lab is to really provide extension-based learning opportunities. So this is a kindergarten visit to the lab. They were exploring lines, and you'll notice how they're using a manipulative that looks like straws, but it actually has connectors. So they're designing, building, and creating. And this is usually integrated into their learning approaches with whatever they're studying in the classroom. And this is another way to meet a varying learning style for each child.
As Megan mentioned, we talked about rubrics and talked about the process. And this is an example of a 5th grade rubric of what I used because I also at one point taught accelerated mathematics. And so again, through junior kindergarten through 6th grade, we do not have grades. And so we use what is known as a rubric. And we feel that this is a very effective way to help students understand clearly what they are approaching. These are the things that they're working on. What they are meeting. They're meeting the expectation of particular standards of our curriculum and what they're exceeding. So in this particular case, You see the 3 columns. If you notice in the approaches that we really have it very clearly defined for the student, that even though their answer is not necessarily on target, the goal is for them to justify and support the decisions that were made. Again, this is accelerated mathematics. We use a program or an approach called the investigation approach, and a series and a curriculum. And this is aside from the rudimentary kind of what is known as when I was in school, kind of skill and drill. It's not necessarily how fast you can do something. I always tell my math students, slow and steady wins the race. It's all about the process and the deep dive of thinking and learning. So not just quickly solving an algebraic expression, but how did you do that? What caused you to do that? Can you clearly explain the steps of how you arrived at that? If you take a look in the meets column, this talks about the expectation of a student having one correct strategy, and it kind of demonstrates a very accurate solution. And if you take a look at my notes here, I'm explaining to them the parts that they did a very correct strategy and also kind of giving them some encouragement. It looks like you skipped a common multiple. So not necessarily saying you're wrong, but we really want to help guide their thinking. The exceeds column is going above and beyond what the teacher is asking you to do. So you are answering a correct equation in 2 ways. You're not just focusing on one. You're not just focusing on the way that is kind of comfortable. Again, we are pushing students to take these meaningful risks, but also making sure that they are providing evidence to justify their answer, which is incredibly important of what we focus on here at Flint Hill School. Again, this is kind of a big phrase at the lower school. We are all about making the learning visible. That means that whether the student is in the classroom or outside of the classroom, you have a sneak peek of what they are doing through our digital portfolio known as Seesaw. The lower school teachers are expected to download and to upload pictures, to share kind of items and things that the students are doing in their classroom. So it's almost as if you're doing these science experiments with them. These are pictures that are actually taken from Seesaw. And the students right here are doing actually a science experiment. As you see, the students have their science journals and they're documenting exactly what they need to do. We're going to take it a step further. The picture to the left is actually a picture of our 6th grade science lab, and also students from 4 through 6 use this lab on the 4th floor. As you can see right here, the students are focusing on our bubblegum experiment. And I must say this was one of the most popular experiments. I wonder why. Maybe it's because the students had an opportunity to chew bubblegum during school. I don't know, but they were very excited about it. So it's not just chewing the gum and writing and documenting. It's more of observing qualitative results. So we asked our students to use their 5 senses. What is it like? What does the gum look like, before you chew it? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? Why is it so sticky? And then they had an opportunity to chew it and then write their observations as well. Megan?
Another way that we encourage teachers and thought partners to document the learning is we have amazing department chairs who serve as these thought partner roles, and they come into the classroom. A lot of time it's hard to capture what's going through a student's mind, especially a young child. So the teachers will work together with their thought partners to capture these incredible moments. In this case, kindergarten was studying the use of lines. They did a lot of exploration. They went out on the playground. They climbed to the top floor of the building. They used different tools in their classroom, all to explore the use of lines. And you'll see some of the quotations in the slides. It says, you use straight lines and curves to make letters. Even things with lines or pencils. So they really went a step further. And this was all in the process of rolling out their handwriting without peers unit. You'll also see here, this is another example from Seesaw that we pulled. This is a 5th grade experiment. As Robin said, they love these hands-on real life connections. They used Orbeez, again, to make a scientific question and then document what happened before and after the experiment through inquiry. We also take it a step further, and teachers will take photos such as this one. This is an example of a teacher documenting how students are using their spelling words in a hands-on way.
Again, right here, we're going back to 6th grade. So kind of taking it a step up of what the expectations are. As you see here, this is an example from one of my students last year. I taught 6th grade accelerated math as well. If you never noticed, math is my jam. And so what we're expecting the students to do using our investigation approach is not just having them to multiply fractions. We want to make sure that they understand the why. At Flint Hill, we are all about the why. We're not, again, it's not about how fast you do it. It's not about how quickly you can do it. It's not about kind of the number of problems you can solve in a short period of time. We want to know, do you really understand what you're doing? And can you clearly articulate that in class? So if you take a look at the right quickly, it says, do you demonstrate your work and you show each step of the problem? Do you accurately explain how you solved each problem? Can you use the accurate mathematical language to express what you're doing? So the question is how and why two fractions can be equivalent. It says to describe, explain, or draw to support your answer below. And yes, you may look at this and say, this can't be a sixth grade explanation, but it actually is. And if you notice, the student was very clear about his understanding in fractions. He also took it a step further. If you take a look at the right, he also created this visual to help share, to explain to me that he really understood what he needed to do. Power of play. Play is definitely important for us at Flint Hill. It's not just important for our lower school Huskies that use this to be, to help understand what it, to collaborate with their peers and also to learn, self-directed skills, but also for our older Huskies as well. We have components throughout our schedule where students have time to play. So they have 2 separate times during the day, during break and recess, to go out and play and explore our wonderful playgrounds and to play with each other. We want to make sure that we incorporate play, that it's not just about academics for us, but this is a very key component in the social emotional components of every single student. Megan?
Yes, as Robin mentioned, for us, play is really the work of children. This is an example I personally wanted to share. Last year, I was fortunate to teach a 2nd grade class, a small cohort, and the students wanted to solve the problem of monitoring themselves in the classroom with their behaviors. So they had a behavior goal each day. And when we reached our goal, they wanted to have a way to celebrate. So they asked if we could watch a movie. And they also simultaneously noticed that through our amazing one-to-one program with Apple, we had all these computer boxes left over. So I presented them with a design challenge to design, build, and create a movie theater in our classroom. And it was wonderful. I also encouraged them to focus on the design constraint. We talk a lot about the engineering design thinking process, both in the innovation lab and within the classroom. So the design constraint for this project was their movie seat had to fold up to be its original form as the box. And the students really took a big thrill from this in a safe and guided way. The Innovation Lab, again, is a special place just for play. So there are often times where students will come in and explore the manipulatives with their classmates. We have an amazing Lego wall, and we have lots of gross motor and fine motor manipulatives. So as Robin said earlier, everything we do is intentional, but it's play with a purpose.
Last but not least, this is a very, very important component of Flint Hill, and we practice this through junior kindergarten through 12th grade, is mindfulness. We want to help students to understand the importance of how to use their bodies and to control their minds so they can do what they need to do to be successful as students. As you see here, this is an example of a focus on the growth mindset and helping students to realize that your body does go through stress. That we talk a great deal about the fight or flight response and what their body experiences during that time, but not just focusing on that, helping them to understand what strategies that can they implement to calm themselves when they're starting to feel nervous or anxious. Do some belly breathing, some positive self-talk. We focus a great deal on the growth mindset. Again, at Flint Hill, we are all about presenting students in a way that they are able to take meaningful risks. And if they aren't able to take meaningful risks, that means that we need to do more on our part to help students understand the purpose of a growth mindset, that they will face challenges. They will fall and skin their knees metaphorically. They have to get back up and they have to try again and persevere. We believe in the power of yet. This is an example of a 5th grade bulletin board where the students are understanding and kind of documenting and reflecting, what are those things I don't know how to do right now? It doesn't mean I'll never learn how to do them, but I don't understand it yet. I don't understand how to complete this math problem yet. I'm not really clear about this science experiment yet. So what you'll see here in these pieces of paper, they actually wrote down their goals for the year, one of their goals, and something that they're going to try to step out of the box and kind of go into that uneasiness in order for them to figure it out. I hope you enjoyed our presentation. Megan and I, as always, have an amazing time talking to our families and making sure we're doing everything possible to make the learning visible in the lower school. I'm now going to turn it over to Mia Burton, who is our Director of Institutional Equity and Inclusion, and also our Interim Director of Counseling. Mia Burton.
Mia, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to take a moment to share some things about our DEI program here in the lower school, and also the connections that we have to our social emotional learning. As John Thomas mentioned earlier, our vision for all students at Flint Hill, and this is from our youngest to oldest Huskies, is to take meaningful risks, be yourself, and make a difference. And we believe that our work around diversity, equity, and inclusion is what helps to make this possible. And when we speak about our work in that area, it's not about who's in the building and about what we're teaching, but it's about how we teach and the student experience and how this connects to inquiry, wonder, perspective taking skills, and some of the things that Robin and Megan mentioned in their short presentation. We also like to use it as an opportunity to build community, to talk about identity, and not just focus on what we have that is different about each of our experiences, but also what we share together as a community that brings us together and forms the uniqueness of each and every student. This also, fosters a sense of belonging, which we believe is essential for all students' brains to be open to learning and growing, along with our mindfulness program. So all of this, again, connects to our wellness program, which is run through our counseling department. And our wellness begins with our JK students and learning about feelings and emotions and how we make connections through the 5th and 6th grade programs, where we delve into some more developmentally appropriate topics. But all of these things, again, work together to build that sense of belonging, to make our students have the skills to become the trailblazers that we hope that we see in their years at Flint Hill. I'm going to take the opportunity now to introduce Kathleen Stratman, and she will tell us a little bit more about the parent perspective.
Thanks, Mia. It's always fun to do the parent perspective, especially when you get to sit through the presentation, because I've been in personal experiences where you see how a school presents itself, and then maybe as a parent, you're like, I've never really seen that. And that's so not true about Flint Hill. I should say, my name's Kathleen Stratman. I have 3 kids at the school. I have an 8th grader, I have a 5th grader, and I have a 2nd grader. We are now in our 4th year at the school. Every single slide that Megan and Robin were presenting, I could immediately recall recent experiences with my 3 children where they were demonstrating the things that you're seeing in the classroom. And I think as a parent, especially living in this area, to be able to see your children look at life and be always questioning the why and looking at, why are the leaves turning colors right now? Why, how tall is that building over there? I can, recall some of my math concepts to figure out how tall that building is over there. Just the other day, my son Liam, I was saying something about how I don't know how to play guitar because he's studying and learning how to play guitar. And he literally stopped me and said, Mom, you don't know how to play guitar yet. And I was like, well, that's true. I'm not dead. That's right. I could do it. And so I think one of the things that I want to emphasize is that we feel like Flint Hill has been a good home for us because they do look at the whole child, and they are trying to give them lifelong skills that they can not only practice as learners, but as people. And we have 3 very different children personality wise, but we have seen those principles in practice in their lives, and we've seen them very easily put them to use. The only thing I would say that is potentially missing from the presentation that I think is also very unique about Flint Hill is we have been floored by how amazing the teachers are, especially over the last, 2 years, where it was an incredible sacrifice on their part to continue to show up, especially also when we went virtual. it is, there are no words actually to describe how many times on a weekend I have gotten an email from a teacher because they happened to be on a nature walk and realized that something they saw would be interesting to Liam, my fifth grader. I mean, these are the kinds of things that when you have a small class size and you have a community that is kind of really all organized around the best interests of the kids at the school, you can't put a price tag on that. It's unbelievable to know that, that whole community is invested in making sure that your child succeeds. The only final thing I wanted to point, because it is a post-COVID world, I feel somewhat guilty because I will say when everything happened in, March of 2020, our students were so prepared because the classroom experience for them has always been technology based, and they have learned how to use technology as part of their learning. So for them, it was just taking their iPad home and practicing the skills that they had been doing in classrooms. Just this morning, my daughter and my son were playing a game where they were rolling dice and playing a math game, and then like using their iPads to like do the board. And I just thought to myself, this is incredible. This is incredible that they have their iPads. Like I used to have textbooks and scissors and glue. And so I think that was a huge benefit when we went online, because they weren't having to learn anything. They were just putting in practice the skills they already had in a different setting. So I'll stop there, and I know there'll be questions at some point.
Okay, so at this point, we can move forward to a question and answer segment. So we have, of course, Robin and Megan. Any questions that you might have for them or their presentation? Mia, both as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, as well as the Director of Counseling Services, and myself, Director of Enrollment Management and Financial Aid. Any questions that you might have related to the admission process. And I'd like to also introduce another one of our colleagues here, Ben Harper. If you'd like to introduce yourself and share a little bit about what you do at Flint Hill.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Harper. I'm the director of our Learning Center, which offers scaffolded support to all of our students, sort of JK through 6, in various ways as their needs sort of present in our classrooms. And I'm happy to talk in greater detail about that if any of you have any questions about it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So feel free to use the chat. Also, if you'd like to unmic, feel free to do that as well. If you have any questions about our approach to teaching and learning in the lower school, about the admission process, about the financial aid process, about other opportunities to engage here.
Hello, I have a question.
Great.
How do you approach students who have special needs, such as ASD?
Ben,
Hi,
do you
I'm
want
sorry, can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay.
So we offer a lot of support for students who have learning and attentional challenges primarily, and Mia can elaborate more on students who are social emotional needs that are developing and so forth. We don't have a lot of direct support or expertise for students who are on the autism spectrum. It's not. We just don't have the expertise in our departments to work directly with those students. There are obviously some other supports outside of school, but it really depends on the nature of how that child's needs are sort of presenting in school and what that looks like.
And I will just echo Ben's comments, because there is such a wide range of needs of students who might be on the autism spectrum. And so what we have done previously is really looked at each student individually to see what types of services that we could use to utilize to support those students, whether it is through a partnership through our learning center and our counselors during the day, through social skills group, and also collaborating with outside resources that the family may have already used with those students. So again, it's hard to give a one blanket answer because it's really specific to the student and the student's needs and the questions that the family may have regarding their situation.
Thank you, Ben and Mia. And we have a couple other questions in the chat here. One of them is that we talked quite a bit today about 4th to 6th grade activities, and some of our viewers would like to hear a little bit more about our kindergarten through grade 3 activities. Megan or Robin, do you want to jump in there?
Sure, I can speak to kindergarten. Junior kindergarten, actually, through 3rd grade. We have a very robust wellness curriculum where wellness is taught within your child's schedule on a weekly basis, but then the teacher is a part of that lesson and conversation. And students are explicitly taught strategies around simple things that would seem simple to adults, but are actually behaviors that most kids need to learn. Things like how to ask someone to play, all the way up through 3rd grade as to how to develop skills around being a bystander and witnessing 2 students having a conflict of some sort, and how to either decide whether to report that or possibly engage in it. And I think these are strategies that really speak to our community values and are very intentional. In kindergarten specifically, the students have lots of collaborative opportunities throughout their learning experience each day. So when they begin their day, they have opportunities to arrive, and there's different stations open that they can participate in with other friends in their class. They also have opportunities, even as we saw in the photo, to use manipulatives and work together through project-based learning throughout their day. And I think it's also important, we mentioned the power of play. And, in kindergarten, we do have a robust language arts, social studies, science, and math curriculum, but that's all embedded in the use of learning tools to play and gain better insights into how to work together in partners as well as small groups. And I was just in a kindergarten yesterday, and I was coaching a student around a social situation at recess. And the teacher had mindful strategies listed on an anchor chart in her room that I was able to refer to. And the student was very familiar with it. Everything from going to a peaceful place, which is my favorite, to making your body like a mountain. So we're making mind to body connections all the time at a very early age. We also mentioned in our presentation about kindness. I know Mia is fortunate to go in every week to junior kindergarten and teach lessons around how to be kind. These are all tools in our toolkit, as we call it, and students have these tools and their strategies that they wear around their waist, metaphorically, all the way up through 6th grade.
Thank you so much, Megan, for that answer. We do have a couple of questions related to the transition to Flint Hill at JKK, and then, of course, at our upper grades, and in our upper grades, looking at where children are academically and that transition into our program. Robin, would you be able to answer that question for us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, any student who's new to our Flint Hill community, as I mentioned during our presentation, we are very intentional about incorporating community building during the first 6 weeks of school. So this is from the responsive classroom approach, where we take this time to help students understand, their peers, to understand their teachers, and to build those relationships. In grades JK through 4, it's known as the morning meeting. In grades 5 through 6, it's known as CPR, or the circle of power and respect. We also have opportunities for our new students to be able to have lunch bunches with our lower school counselor, with me. I just had one in my office the other day, and it was absolutely amazing. And also really using ourselves, Megan and I and other administrators in the building, to really go into the classrooms and to meet with the students and to ask them very specific questions on how they're doing. So it's not just about making sure we're doing our due diligence to ensure that they are here at Flint Hill as new students. We want to make sure that they feel included and that they have a sense of belonging. So we are very intentional about doing that. In regards to evaluation to the upper grades 4 through 6, particularly 5th and 6th grade, instead of us focusing on grades, as I mentioned, we really focus on making sure that we have specific benchmarks 3 times a year. So for the reading inventory, that is the students take that 3 times a year, and also a math inventory. I will also say, and I'm sure my colleagues will agree with me, that our Flint Hill teachers are exceptional at differentiating instruction. So if we have students that need to learn in a different way or present information in a different way, our teachers are already equipped to do that. And if we realize that students need support, then we're going to make sure that we make that happen and hopefully partner with you to make sure that we can put those systems into place. But again, very intentional about building relationships and also building relationships with you as parents. It's just as important that we're reaching out to you. Megan and I will begin making phone calls next week to all of the new families, even the new families from last year, because we were shut down. I mean, the school was functioning, but we couldn't have any families come in last year, and COVID definitely impacted that. And unfortunately, it's still impacting the lower school in multiple ways. But we're doing everything in our power to make sure that the families are continuing to feel like they have a sense of belonging. It's definitely not the way that we want it, but we're doing everything that we can to get back to that place.
Thank you. And I'll jump in and answer a couple questions I see in the chat about class sizes, admission. And so for the lower school, and that's true actually through middle school and upper school as well, we aim to limit the class sizes to 18 students per class. And so for the lower school, for junior kindergarten, we have 1 section. And then for kindergarten through 4th grade, we have 2. And then in 5th and 6th grade, we have 3. And then as you get to middle school and upper school, of course, those sizes increase. And so there was a question about how many applicants we get versus how many we admit. And honestly, that varies quite a bit from year to year, depending on the application pool, the interest. We've learned that this year that the historical numbers haven't really meant too much the last couple of years. That's all shifted quite a bit. But the admission team is here to work with you throughout the admission process. We don't want families to feel anxious, wondering if they're going to get admitted. We keep the mission and your child at the center of all the decisions, and we have open dialogue throughout the admission process. So if you haven't already submitted an application or been in touch with an admission officer, that's a great first step. And that admission officer, it would likely be Dawn or Rico here with us today. They're going to learn all about your family and learn about your student's profile and where they're really going to thrive. And we'll share information with each other about whether Flint Hill might be the best place with your family, for your family. And we'll do that throughout the entire admission process. And what I tell families is that your child will be admitted to their best fit school, because if they're the best fit for that school, then they're going to be admitted, and we can help uncover all of that together. And so I gave the official answer about class sizes, but Kathleen, would you like to share what has been your experience in terms of the size of classes that you've seen here?
Yeah, so I think the size of the classroom is one of the things that has been most meaningful for my kids. Not only just because, as I think I mentioned before, that they have a very deep and personal relationship, not only with the teacher that is maybe their homeroom teacher, but all of the different specialists that are coming into their lives throughout the day, whether it be the librarian. The other thing that I wanted to point out, because Mia was talking about it before, it was something new to me, is that innovation and wellness, these are part of the children's schedule in the same way math, science, and social studies are. So it is every day they're getting a dedicated, a block of time for it. And again, that's usually a specialist who is, very gifted in what they're doing, coming in and working with the kids. But at the same time, you would be amazed. There are days when my kids will come home and they'll say they did a project, and I'll be like, was that social studies or was that science? Because the learning is so integrated, and the teachers are so good at meeting the kids where they are, that like so much of the learning is directed by the kids themselves. Like I know there's been a lot of questions, for instance, in the chat about junior kindergarten. When my daughter Emerson was a junior kindergarten, or they went on walks with Miss Thomas, nature walks every day, and that had the kids start talking about waste and the world and the earth and how we have to save it. And then that resulted in them going to a field trip to a waste management. And then while they were on that field trip, some of the kids were disturbed to see that there were bikes thrown away. And so they wrote a letter to Miss Hall, who was then the head of school, and asked if they could do something about that because they thought it was such a waste. And then they ended up organizing an entire school drive for donating bikes to an organization that they went to go visit and learn about it. And I have no idea what class that was, but like, I think it's a perfect example of the kind of control that the students have and how much the school is invested in taking them wherever they want to go with their learning.
Thank you, Kathleen. That was excellent. Amazing story. Mia Burton, there's a question about how we monitor bullying and work to prevent and address those issues. Would you be able to support us with that?
Sure, and I think this happens on in many different ways. I think the first is the education of our faculty, and noticing behaviors and building relationships with students. We want students, who are experiencing challenges to know that they can reach out to an adult who is present, whether in the classroom or on recess or breaks. And we use the guidelines provided in how to bully-proof your classroom. It's something we've used as a guide in just how we go about our day and recognizing and noticing behaviors. We also use those conflict resolution skills when we are teaching our wellness program, from the JKers learning about what it means to have a strong feeling and how to resolve disputes. Oftentimes we know that the largest conflicts start from some of the smallest miscommunications. And how do we identify and give our students the skills to identify when those things are happening, when people are misunderstanding what they are saying, or when they have something happen that makes them feel uncomfortable. We talk about teach them to use their I message and how to explain and express their feelings towards their peers. And again, all at developmentally appropriate stages and using developmentally appropriate language. But again, I do think that because we are deliberate about the relationships and deliberate about how we can, role model and how we can help students learn to advocate for themselves in resolving conflict, and at the same time, making sure that the adults are a part of those solutions when they happen as well for those students who are needing support. And again, I think that using our lunch bunches, using a lot of our informal spaces to have conversations, to talk about feelings, I think that has also helped our students to really have the skills to either identify and solve some of those conflicts, or to know that there is a responsible adult who will help them. But this is just part of our ongoing learning and development of those tools in that toolkit that come from our wellness program that are also supported in other areas of the school.
Thank you so much, Mia, for that response. Robin, I'm hoping you can take this next question. It is on teacher professional development, how we support our teachers and continue their education.
Absolutely. One of the many things that drew me to Flint Hill is their intentional focus and love and dedication to professional development for our faculty and staff. I will say in the lower school, all of our teachers have advanced degrees in and certified in education. Some of them are certified. Also, we want to make sure that we're sending a very strong message for our teachers that, there's never a point where you stop learning to be the best teacher you can possibly be. So there is no one here in the lower school who deems themselves to be kind of the Obi-Wan Kenobi of of education, because education is constantly growing and evolving every single day, several times a day, and helping us to understand what the latest educational research states and what's best for students. And so we encourage our teachers to continue their professional development. It's part of an expectation for us is in regards to summer programs and opportunities, whether they're 2 or 3 day workshops or week-long workshops. We definitely encourage all of our teachers to take part in the People of Color Conference, helping them to understand more about diverse situations in their classrooms and also for the students. We want to make sure we're doing everything possible to send a very clear message to our teachers that this is a place to continue to grow and to continue to strengthen the professional development skills that they have and that we offer. So there's never a point at Flint Hill where teachers are saying, okay, I've already done 5 years of professional development, I'm done. It's actually an expectation. It's something that we definitely look forward to. And if we notice that a teacher wants to do that, we definitely open the opportunity for them. We have a very vast budget in professional development. So even if teachers want to continue another degree or they want to add additional certification, we're definitely open to that, because we want to make sure that our teachers are constantly up to date and tuned in a way that meets the needs of all the students here at Flint Hill.
Thank you so much, Rob. And I have a question in the chat that I think that both you and Kathleen might want to piggyback on, and that is, how do you know what your kids have been doing at school?
So as I met Kathleen, I'll definitely let you take the big ones. I want you to share definitely your parent experience. But during the presentation, I shared just a tidbit about how we have our digital portfolio known as Seesaw. This is like the window into Flint Hill. We are all about making the learning visible. So very rarely will you see a worksheet come home. Actually, we're not really into worksheets. It's all about exploration and learning and guided learning and inquiry-based learning. And so the best way to document that is through an app. And the app is called Seesaw. And the Seesaw app is downloaded on all the students' iPads. Every teacher is expected to kind of incorporate what they're learning and what the students are learning and what they're sharing into their personal Seesaw pages. So parents have direct access. They actually get notifications in their email when something has been added to their child's Seesaw account. And this is the way that the student is able to share and kind of clearly help the parents understand what's going on in the classroom. It could be a video. It could be a video of them explaining a math problem. It could be a video helping them understand about the growth mindset. It could be a video about them sharing, a reading, part of their reading and how they summarize it. So many, many wonderful ways. But Seesaw, I have to say, is like the window into Flint Hill. And I'm going to let Kathleen share some of her experiences as a parent.
I think the best example I could give as to how visible the learning is that about a week ago, Emerson opened the mailbox and there was a book about penguins in the book from her grandmother. And it's because on Seesaw, I guess about 3 weeks ago, she posted an answer to a question that her favorite animal was a penguin and she wanted to learn more about penguins. And so it's not only an incredible resource to be able to know what it is that your kids are doing. And as they get older, the students themselves participate in doing a lot of the posting. So they record videos, they tell you about what they might be doing. So you can see a Spanish presentation and it's your child's voice, doing their Spanish lessons. And it's not only a great way to see what's going on in the classroom, but to encourage conversations. I think I also see that translate a lot into the way home learning is approached. So it was explained to me when we first got there, they're not a worksheet type of place, and they're not a school that basically says, if you have 7 hours of homework, you're a really good school because the child spent 7 hours doing homework. And it is age appropriate as it grows up. But a lot of the activities that, say, my now second grader comes home to do are a box of math manipulatives, and she's encouraged to play that with a sibling or with a parent. And that, to see that they're excited to do their homework, and then I can learn a little bit more about what they're doing in the classroom. And then the final thing I'll say is, again, the teachers are really, really good if something is happening in the classroom that they think your student would benefit from getting even more of. I've had teachers send me apps saying, this is something Emerson showed a lot of interest in. This is what Liam seemed to be really excited about. Here's some apps you can access, and we're using them in the classroom too. And my kids love that. Like, they were just doing Tinker yesterday because that's something they do a lot in school. And so almost too much. So if you're not looking to be involved in your life, this is not the school for you.
Thank you so much. Megan, I'm hoping that you could speak a little bit more about our after-school programs.
Sure, I would love to. After school is an extension of our lower school day. So the same values and expectations extend to our aftercare program as well as our after school clubs enrichment program. The club offerings vary and usually include things that we know our students are interested in. As Robin mentioned, we try to have student-directed learning, and that extends after school too. So we've had students request chess, and we've brought in various chess groups. We've also had teachers share their passions, which is always very popular. We are fortunate to have a Cricut vinyl cutter in our innovation lab, and we actually had 2 teachers who had one at home, and that's sort of their personal passion. So they were able to offer a crafting club where they created vinyl crafts each week. We've had language clubs, we've had Chinese club, we've even had a karaoke club after school. We have an amazing 3rd grade teacher who's a very strong vocalist, as it turns out, and she led a karaoke club. So it's a lot of student-driven, passion-based learning, and it's great because it's right after school, so your child has everything at their fingertips right here in the building. I find as a mom that's the convenience part of it is often really attractive and makes it easier. We have a phenomenal dance program. And, with the onset of COVID, we've had to limit some of these things, but they are part of the institution that is the lower school, and they're not going anywhere. So while, as Robin mentioned, some things have been on a hiatus, we're continuing to use this time to think about how we can innovate and make them even better. So when we're back at full strength with them, hopefully next year, we'll be able to roll out some really phenomenal opportunities for all students and allow, again, teachers to have an active involvement as well as connecting external community groups with our school here on campus.
Thank you, Megan. Robin, our last question for this session is, can you please speak more about accelerated programs, specialty classes, foreign language, and any clubs or sports?
Sure. So starting in 5th grade, I'll just speak a little bit about math because that's really the area where we offer acceleration programs or acceleration class. So starting in 5th grade, let me start back in JK through 4, the students are in a self-contained classroom for their mathematics for all of their subjects. Their homeroom teacher focuses on all of the subjects. Starting in 5th grade, students then begin to transition to specific math classes based on their readiness. And so we want to make sure, I think Mia mentioned earlier about meeting students exactly where they are. And that's the best way for us to do that. So whether a student is taking, the standard math class that we offer in the investigation program, whether the student is taking an accelerated portion of the investigation program. And as I mentioned, it's very easy to interpret acceleration as fast-paced, but focusing on Flint Hill and now how intentional we are all about the slow and steady process of learning. And I know for me included, when I learn something new, I don't go at supersonic speed. It's a slow and steady pace for me. And it's the same for the students. And that, I think, replicates how intentional we are here as a community and how important we want to focus and foster the love of learning for students. Also, as they progress to 6th grade, it's more of a departmental model. And this is to prepare the students for 7th grade. So they're moving away from a homeroom teacher to what is known as an advisor. And they're transitioning to all different classes based on their subject. We then continue to offer an accelerated portion of our investigation program for 6th grade. So we have our standard 6th grade class. We have an accelerated 6th grade class. And if we notice students are showing progression, whether they're new, if they, have been in a combination of things, if they have been involved in an AAP program, along with other recommendations that demonstrate that they could be ready for a pre-algebra course, then we provide the students with a survey to determine if they are truly ready. Remember, it's not just about acceleration for us. We really want to make sure that when students are in this class, and let me also say that the pre-algebra course is a 7th grade course. So not just focusing on the algebra, but also understanding that, is this 6th grade student ready to handle the demands and the expectations of a 7th grade course. And that talks about the social and emotional component as well. So we're not just focusing on the academics, but we want to make sure that the whole child is ready to take on this level of responsibility. As regards to foreign language in JK through 6, we offer Spanish. So all of our students at lower school take Spanish, and then beginning in 7th grade, they're able to venture out and to explore other foreign language as well, such as Latin and French.
Thank you, Robin.
Okay.
And so I realize that there was a question earlier in the chat more specific about how we evaluate candidates for admission. And so we, of course, review all of the application requirements. And for those of you that might not be in the process yet or seen it, we do have a steps for applying website where we list those out. So, of course, there's the application form itself, which takes about 15 minutes to complete. There are then the supporting materials, which include updated transcripts and progress reports, recommendation from a current grade level teacher. And then we also ask families to submit any testing that the student has had, the WIS, the WIPSI, SOLs, IC, ERBs, any testing that's on file, we ask that that's submitted throughout the admission process. And then we have a parent questionnaire, and then for some of the higher grades, a student questionnaire, and we have an interview as part of the process too. So the application deadline for all of these is January 21st. We recommend that families aim to have it complete by the end of December, just in case there's any obstacles in getting any of the materials to us. A teacher is out and having a hard time completing the recommendation. So we might think together about how we might be able to fill in that information that we'll need so that we can make the best decision for your child. So the admission committee reviews all of those components of the application, and then those decisions are released on March 4th. And in terms of next steps today, after today, so we have the innovation workshops, which are on Saturday, and those will be held on campus here. We thank you so much for your flexibility today with switching to this virtual format. We had so much interest in this event that we weren't able to safely accommodate it on campus while our students are here. But Saturday, our students aren't here. So we welcome you to come to that. If you're not already registered, the registration for that closes at noon. And then we'll have another on-campus event, an information session on December that will likely be on a Saturday again for a safety protocol. We'd love for you to see the teachers and the students in the classrooms, but we're just not quite there yet. So we'll have that event on Saturday. And then we have a curiosity event. We talked a little bit about curiosity today that will focus on our appreciation of curiosity in December as well. So you can see a full event listing on the virtual events website under the admission web pages. Also, our team members are here for virtual meetings, for phone consultations, for tours. We are offering on-campus tours if you're really excited to come in and see the facilities before coming to either of those events. So those are some opportunities for next steps. And I want to thank all of our panelists and all of our speakers today. So glad that all of our attendees are here. So thank you for all of the families that are attending this session today. We really appreciate you spending this time with us this morning. And we very much look forward to continuing the conversation, to continuing the dialogue. And please know that all the team members that you met here today are here to help you through the process and ultimately find the very best fit school for your child.